My family demanded I postpone my wedding because my cheating sister was divorcing. My parents skipped it to punish me. But when they found out I married a multimillionaire heir, they came begging, and I exposed them all. I'm 28 years old. I work in digital marketing, and I need to tell this story because I still can't believe everything that happened last year with my wedding, my sister, and basically how my entire family exploded in the most dramatic way possible. I guess I should start from the beginning so all of this makes sense, because, context matters, and the truth is, this situation had been brewing for years. I grew up with my parents, Howard and Judith, and my older sister Brooke. My parents have a hardware store, or well, they had one. We'll get to that. The thing is that for as long as I can remember, Brooke was always the golden child of the family, you know what I mean? Like, everything she did was perfect, and everything I did was like, meh, that's nice, I guess. When she got good grades, my parents would organize celebration dinners. When I got the same grades or better, they'd say, "Oh, that's good, sweetie," and keep watching TV. I don't know. I always thought it was just me, that maybe I was exaggerating or being dramatic, but looking back, there was definitely some marked favoritism going on. Brooke married Vincent when she was like 2 was 21 at the time, and it was this whole production, honestly. My parents spent a ton of money they didn't have on that wedding because Vincent came from an upper-middle-class family, not super rich but definitely better off than us, and my parents were obsessed with looking good in front of them. It was almost embarrassing the way they acted, like super obsequious and trying to impress them all the time. Fast forward like 3 years after that, I met Nathan at a work conference. He works in his family's pharmaceutical company. But at that time, I didn't know anything about that. We hit it off immediately, that instant connection that sometimes happens, and we started dating. Nathan is incredible, honestly, super down to earth and considerate, nothing like what you'd expect from someone with money. The thing is that Nathan told me from the beginning about his family and the business they had, but he asked me to be discreet about it because he'd had bad experiences before with people who only approached him for his money. So when I started introducing him to my family, I simply told them he worked in pharmaceuticals but never specified that his family owned the company. My parents assumed he was like a regular employee, and honestly, I didn't do anything to correct that assumption. They met his parents, the Elliots, a couple of times at casual gatherings, and his parents were super normal and approachable, so my parents never suspected anything. The Elliots are amazing people, by the way. Super genuine and warm, nothing pretentious despite having a ton of money. Well, Nathan and I had been together for like 2.5 years when we got engaged, and obviously we started planning the wedding. We decided to get married relatively quickly, like within 6 months, because, why wait longer if we already knew we wanted to be together? During all this time, my relationship with my parents continued to be kind of distant. They always compared everything to Brooke and Vincent, like, oh, Brooke and Vincent did this for their wedding, or Brooke and Vincent went to such and such place for their honeymoon. What are you guys going to do? It was exhausting, honestly, but I was already used to it at that point. What bothered me more was how they treated Nathan versus how they treated Vincent. With Vincent, they were all smiles and attention, but with Nathan, they were like cordial but nothing more, probably because they thought he didn't have as much money as Vincent. So we get to 1 week before my wedding, literally 7 days before, and everything went to hell. Turns out Brooke had been having an affair with one of Vincent's friends. Yeah, a friend of her own husband. I know, super classy. And Vincent found the texts on her phone. Apparently, it had been going on for like 6 months. It wasn't a one-time thing. Vincent obviously exploded, confronted Brooke, and immediately filed for divorce. This whole explosion happened like on a Tuesday night, and by Wednesday morning, my parents were already knocking on my door hysterical. My mother was crying. My father was furious, but not at Brooke, but at Vincent for daring to divorce his perfect daughter, and they basically told me we needed to talk about something urgent. I thought they were coming to talk about Brooke's drama, or maybe they needed to vent. But no, they had other plans. They sat down in my living room. Nathan was at work, thank God, and my mother took my hands and said, "Evelyn, honey, we need you to postpone your wedding." I was like, "What?" And she kept explaining that Brooke was going through a very difficult time, that she was devastated by the divorce, and that it would be incredibly insensitive and hurtful for her to have to watch her younger sister get married happily while her marriage was falling apart. My father added that it would be the right thing to do, that family supports each other in difficult times, and that a year of waiting wasn't that much time in the grand scheme of things. I literally couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them no, that I absolutely was not going to postpone my wedding because Brooke decided to cheat on her husband. My mother started crying harder, saying I had always been selfish and that I never thought about my sister, and my father said they were very disappointed in me. The conversation got ugly fast, with them basically saying I was horrible and heartless, and me trying to explain to them that it was ridiculous to ask me to change all my plans and lose thousands of dollars in non-refundable deposits, by the way, because Brooke screwed up. Finally, after like an hour of discussion that was going nowhere, my father told me, well, if you're not going to postpone the wedding, then we're not going. They thought that would break me, that I would beg them to come. But I was already so fed up with the whole situation that I simply told them, fine, don't come. The wedding will be beautiful with or without you. My mother was shocked, like with her mouth open, unable to believe I hadn't broken down, and my father was red with rage. They said some more pretty ugly things about being a bad daughter and a bad sister, and then they left slamming the door. That night, when Nathan came home, I told him everything, and he was furious on my behalf. But he was also super understanding and told me we'd make the wedding perfect no matter who was or wasn't there. The next few days before the wedding were crazy because my parents were calling me constantly, leaving me voicemails saying I was destroying the family, that Brooke was crying all the time, how could I be so cruel, basically trying to guilt-trip me into changing my mind. I stopped answering after the second day. Brooke also tried calling me a couple of times, but I didn't answer because honestly I had nothing to say to her. She made her choices and now she had to live with the consequences. It wasn't my responsibility to put my life on hold to make her feel better. The wedding day arrived and it was absolutely beautiful. The Elliots, my in-laws, were incredible and super supportive. Nathan's mom, who is this super elegant lady but also super warm, helped me get ready and basically fulfilled the role my mother should have had. There was a moment when I was finishing putting on my dress when I broke down a little bit. I'm not going to lie, because it was weird that my parents weren't there, but the Elliots and Nathan made me feel so loved that I was able to get past it. The ceremony was perfect. The reception was amazing. And honestly, I didn't even notice my parents' absence that much, because I was surrounded by people who genuinely were happy for us. What my parents didn't know, and this is important, is that the wedding was held at the Elliots' private club and it was this whole elegant production because, well, they have the money to do it and they wanted it to be special for us. There were like 200 guests. Beautiful decorations, live band, everything top quality. Here's where things get interesting. The Elliots pharmaceutical company has social media, obviously, because it's a big legitimate business. Their communications team took photos at the wedding with our permission, of course, and posted them on the company's official accounts as part of a post about events for the founding family or something like that. We were on our honeymoon in the Maldives. Yeah, the Elliots paid for an incredible trip for us when the second act of this drama started. Apparently, someone who knows my parents saw the photos on the company's social media, recognized the Elliott name, and told my parents that basically I had married the son of the owners of a super successful pharmaceutical company. I have no idea who it was, though I have my suspicions, but my parents found out and, let's just say they didn't take it well. When Nathan and I got back from our honeymoon, we found like 15 voicemails from my parents on our phones. The first ones were like confused, asking if it was true that the Elliots had a pharmaceutical company. The next ones were already accusatory, saying I had lied to them and how could I not have told them. The last ones were completely hysterical. My mother crying, saying I had betrayed her, and my father yelling about lost business opportunities. I didn't answer any of their messages because I was enjoying my post-wedding happiness and didn't want to deal with their drama, but apparently that made them angrier because they decided to show up at my house without warning. It was like 3 days after we got back from our honeymoon, a Saturday morning. Nathan and I were having a peaceful breakfast when the doorbell rang, and there they were, my parents, standing at my door with faces of absolute fury. I had no choice but to let them in because they were already making a scene outside. They came in, and my father immediately started yelling at me, saying I was a liar and a manipulator, that I had hidden critical information from them, that we could have had valuable business connections if he had known the Elliots had money. My mother was equally furious but crying at the same time, saying I had been selfish, that I had deprived Brooke of meeting important people. How dare I have such a luxurious wedding while they were struggling with their business? Basically, they were accusing me of being a bad daughter because I hadn't told them I was marrying someone rich so they could I don't know, use him somehow. I sat there letting them vent for a moment, and Nathan was by my side squeezing my hand, clearly uncomfortable but letting me handle the situation. When they finally shut up, expecting me to apologize or justify myself, I simply told them, "Get out of my house." My father said, "What?" And I repeated, louder, "Get out of my house right now." I told them I didn't owe them any explanation, that my life and my marriage weren't their business opportunity, that I was tired of them always treating me like a second-class citizen compared to Brooke, and that if they didn't leave voluntarily, I was going to call the police. My mother tried to play the victim, saying I was being cruel and disrespectful, but I had already reached my limit. I yelled at them. Yeah, literally yelled at them, which I almost never do. That their perfect daughter, Brooke, had ruined her own marriage by being unfaithful. That I didn't have to put my life on hold for her mistakes, and that if they wanted to have a relationship with me in the future, they needed to start treating me with basic respect. I physically kicked them out of my house, locked the door, and immediately blocked them both from my phone and all my social media. Nathan was kind of in shock, because he had never seen me that angry. But he also told me he was proud of me for setting boundaries. I thought that would be the end of it, that my parents would get the message and leave me alone for a while. But no, they had to escalate things even further. Turns out, like a week later, while Nathan and I were visiting the Elliott's house for a family dinner, my parents decided to show up there without an invitation. The Elliott's live on a private gated property with security, so the guard called us asking if we knew Howard and Judith and if they could come in. Nathan and his dad went to the entrance to see what they wanted, because I honestly didn't have the energy to deal with more drama. According to what Nathan told me later, my parents showed up with a whole prepared story about how I was a pathological liar, that I had hidden important information from them, that I had manipulated Nathan into marrying me for his money, basically trying to paint me as a bad person to turn the Elliots against me. Nathan's dad, who is a super polite and proper man but who doesn't let anyone walk over him, listened patiently to everything, and then told them something like, "With all due respect, Evelyn is part of our family now, and we know her well enough to know what kind of person she is. If she decided to keep certain information private, I'm sure she had her reasons. I suggest you respect the boundaries she has established and leave our property." My parents tried to keep arguing, but Nathan's dad was firm and basically told them that if they didn't leave, he would personally call the police. They left humiliated and furious, according to Nathan. When they told me what had happened, I was mortified. I apologized 1,000 times to the Elliots for my parents' behavior, but they were super understanding and told me not to worry, that they understood the situation perfectly, and that they supported me completely. Nathan's mom hugged me and told me something that to this day makes me cry when I remember it. She said, "You're our daughter now, and we protect our family." That night I cried a lot. Not from sadness, but from relief and gratitude for having such incredible in-laws. After that incident, I thought my parents would finally give up. But Brooke decided to get involved in the matter. Like 2 weeks after all that, I received a call from an unknown number, and I made the mistake of answering. It was Brooke, using a burner phone because I had blocked her from everything. She started yelling at me immediately, saying I was a selfish bitch, that I had destroyed the family, that because of me, Mom and Dad were devastated, and their business was going badly, as if that was my responsibility, and that I should be ashamed of myself. I hung up on her immediately, but she kept calling from different numbers, leaving increasingly aggressive voicemails. Finally, she sent me a series of text messages from another burner number, basically saying everything was my fault, that the family was falling apart because of my selfishness, and that someday I would regret choosing money over my family. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I answered her with one single message, a really long one, basically telling her she had no moral right to judge me after destroying her own marriage by being unfaithful, that I didn't owe her or my parents anything, that if the family was falling apart, it was because of their own actions and not mine, and to stop contacting me or I would take legal action. I blocked that number too, and any other unknown number that tried to contact me. Nathan and I even considered changing our phone numbers, but in the end, we decided we weren't going to let them force us to take such drastic measures. Several relatively calm months passed after that. I focused on my work, on my marriage, on building my life without the toxicity of my parents and my sister. The Elliots continued to be incredible. They included me in all kinds of family events, and honestly, I felt closer to them than I ever felt to my own family. Nathan and I started talking about having children soon, you know, building our own family, and everything was going well. But then, like almost a year after the wedding, I discovered something that made me furious all over again. Turns out my cousin Jennifer, with whom I had a pretty close relationship, had been leaking information about me to my parents this whole time. I don't know exactly how I found out. I think it was through another cousin who told me that Jennifer had been talking to my parents regularly and passing them information about where exactly I lived, where I worked, that kind of stuff. When I confronted Jennifer on the phone, she didn't deny it. She told me she was just trying to keep the family together, that my parents deserved to know about my life, basically justifying having been a snitch. I told her what she had done was a betrayal, that I had trusted her, and that from that moment on she was cut from my life too. I blocked her number and deleted all her contacts. Fast forward to now, a little over a year after all this craziness. My parents ended up selling their hardware store because apparently it wasn't doing well. I don't know the exact details because obviously I don't talk to them, and according to what I heard through family gossip, they and Brooke moved to another city to start over. I have no contact with any of them, and honestly, my life is so much more peaceful without their constant drama. Nathan and I are doing well, planning to start trying for a baby in the next few months, and I finally feel like I'm living my life on my own terms without having to worry about meeting my parents' ridiculous expectations or living in my sister's shadow. Sometimes I wonder if I did the right thing, if I was too harsh, or if I should have tried to maintain the relationship somehow. But the truth is that every time I think about how they treated me, how they asked me to put my life on hold, for Brooke, how they only became interested in me when they found out Nathan had money, I realize I have nothing to regret. I did what I had to do to protect my peace of mind and my marriage, and that's enough for me.